Hey everyone. After seeing how many of you enjoyed the previous Why You Should Play, naturally I wanted to make another one. As you may be able to tell from the title of the video, today we're going to take a look at a game from one of my favorite gaming franchises, Kingdom Hearts. But we aren't just talking about any Kingdom Hearts game, we're talking about one of the least loved games in the entire franchise, in Kingdom Hearts ReCoded. Now before I ramble on for too long, let's get it started.
Wait a minute! What happened to my home? My island? Riku! Kairi!
While you toiled away trying to find your dear friend, he quite simply replaced you with some new companions.
Forget it! There's no way you're taking Kairi's heart!
It's my lucky charm. Be sure to bring it back to me.
So you have come this far, and still you understand nothing. Every light must fade. Every heart return to darkness.
Now, Sora, let's call this door for good.
Looks like my summer vacation is over.
Go forth, Sora, Donald, and Goofy. Everyone is waiting.
You make a good other.
Hear me, Kingdom Hearts. It seems we must begin anew.
I am Byroxus. I play a lot of Kingdom Hearts. Love the series. I don't know, grew up with it. I recently have been doing a lot more psychology breakdowns, but when I first kind of got my start online, it was mainly about combat analysis and combat animation. Usually when I talk about a game, I'm like, oh yeah, I enjoy how this game plays and how it feels, because I think animations, in particular, just the way the animation looks and feels plays a lot into why a game is fun to play. Yeah, it kind of just grew from there. I think originally it was just another Kingdom Hearts game, so I was like, of course I'm gonna go play it. I think, if I remember correctly, I don't know if I've ever actually played it on DS. I think I've only emulated it. I didn't grow up with DS or handhelds. My parents were super strict on gaming in general, and so when I do math, I would actually down this is so stupid, but I'd have to do math on my computer, right? I would download emulators, and so I had this really crappy computer that I would emulate Kingdom Hearts Days and Kingdom Hearts ReCoded, where it was running at maybe 10 FPS or 20 FPS, really bad, but just getting to experience another Kingdom Hearts game was always worth it.
Hello, I'm Violin. I'm primarily a Kingdom Hearts speedrunner, and it's a pleasure to be here. Well, I originally tried ReCoded when it first came out in I believe it was 2010. It was actually the first game that I bought with my own hard-earned money. I walked to GameStop when I was 11 years old. And so I walked into the GameStop, pre-ordered ReCoded. I have fond memories of playing it on the DS. ReCoded was the first game in the series that I played at launch, day one. And that was really exciting for me. It's just been so long since I played ReCoded that I forgot how good the gameplay was, because I hadn't played it since 2011, and since then I've been playing mostly KH1, 2, and 3, which are all amazing games. And I don't know, I guess in my mind I thought the DS games were not as good. But then having revisited ReCoded, it is a lot better than I remember.
Hey, I'm Dessa. I myself am a speedrunner of various JRPGs like the Kingdom Hearts games and Final Fantasy games. Those I do stream on Twitch, mainly with categories like Platinum percent or 100%, basically just categories that involve most of, if not the entirety of a game in itself. So, ReCoded, originally I played it when it came out on Nintendo DS. I bought it online got it for my Nintendo DS and then played it. And me being a speedrunner, I of course eventually thought about speedrunning the Kingdom Hearts games. And ReCoded specifically struck to me as a very interesting game because while casually a lot of people might have played it and even adored it, on a speedrunning side it was very underdeveloped with only having like 2 or 3 speedrunners on the leaderboard taking themselves upon the task of doing something with the game. It's been really an undervalued kind of game from my perspective.
So I am Ryu. I am a video editor. I have worked with BioRoxys on a bunch of Kingdom Hearts projects. I've worked on audio work. I've worked on video game gameplay videos, stream highlights, video essays. I can basically edit anything you need me to. I think I got ReCoded along with my sister's DS for a Christmas gift, and I had already went through the Kingdom Hearts games before that, and really just wanted to get a Kingdom Hearts game on the handheld, which ReCoded was there for.
I am Smogaroo, and I am a gamer. I like games like Kingdom Hearts, Xenoblade Chronicles. I also really like racing games and music rhythm games, but mainly I just kind of occasionally like talking about video games and want to encourage people to share their own opinions about the games that they like and kind of how gaming can kind of, positively affect people. That's kind of what I'm into. So what made me want to try ReCoded was because I think at that time I was still a bit of a Nintendo fanboy, kind of. I was kind of recovering Nintendo fanboy. And I had a DS, I did not have a PSP. So I had Days when that came out, and then I learned that there was going to be another Kingdom Hearts for the DS. I was like, oh, I definitely want to try that one. And so I got it. So that was pretty much the whole reason why I wanted to play it.
My name is OG_Scrax. I usually just go by Scrax in the community. My big things is Kingdom Hearts, obviously, but I like to do a lot of challenge runs in the series. I do a lot of that on the stream side, but then on YouTube, I like to do a lot of really fun gameplay and lore type videos. So like maybe some ranking of some magic systems in the game, or a lot of the things I've been doing recently is going through timelines of certain characters, and that's been really fun to delve into the lore of the series even more. So I played ReCoded when I was really young on a DS, and to put it blatantly, I mean, I was a huge Kingdom Hearts nerd as a kid, so the fact that they came out with a new Kingdom Hearts game was enough for me. But as I was playing it, it just became a really fun game to play on the go, because whenever we were traveling a lot as a kid on the road, it was a really fun game to just have ready to pull out and play at any time. I didn't have any specific reason that I started it other than just I've been a Kingdom Hearts nerd since I was like 7 years old, so anytime they come out with a game, I was gonna get it.
So it all started in May 2010 when the new English voice actor for Jiminy Cricket, Phil Snyder, took over for the original voice actor Eddie Carroll when he passed away. Phil wrote on his website that he had started recording for Kingdom Hearts ReCoded. At the time, this was speculated to be a remake of Coded the same way Chain of Memories got a remake on the PlayStation 2. Nothing was known for sure until ReCoded was presented at E3 2010. Tetsuya Nomura originally wanted to just re-release the original game as part of the WiiWare store and release it episodically just like the original version of the game. This was because Nomura wanted to allow the game to reach a wider audience, but with the Nintendo DS being the most popular handheld gaming system over in the States, it seemed like the best choice. They then asked developer Hand to develop ReCoded because they did such a great job with 358 over 2 days. From here, they began to think about just remaking the game, but Nomura was adamant on an as-is recreation of the original, but when seeing the game cartridge wasn't full, he then asked for a 3D remake. After Hand told Nomura their task was nearly impossible, the game grew so large that Square had to bring in some of their Osaka team to help bring the game across the finish line. The game then went on to get mixed scores from reviewers, and the majority of them said, "It isn't anything crazy, but it is good enough to help hold off fans that are waiting for the next big release." 4 years later, the game was put onto the Kingdom Hearts HD 2.5 remix released for the PS3, but in the form of a movie comprised of all the cutscenes. This became the easiest way to experience the game, and since then, people just kind of skip over playing the actual game, which honestly is a shame because the combat is just so much fun. I couldn't recommend it enough. But before we jump into the next section, let me just take a second to thank you guys that watch these videos. You guys are the best. However, 99.5% of you guys are not subscribed, so if you like what you see, make sure to hit that like and subscribe, and maybe even browse some of my other content. Now back to the video.
For some reason, Wonderland's coming to mind. I really liked Wonderland, like the like investigative part, if that made sense, because like you had to figure out. It was almost like a puzzle, if I remember correctly, but because you had to find like the pieces of the memory for Alice in the game, and so you had to figure out like what her name was, what the Queen of Hearts name was, what she was missing, who she ran into, and you could even have like. It's also fun because you could have moments where like you plug in the wrong thing, and it had like a kind of like a tiny what if thing that happens. It was not elaborate at all. It was more just like Alice was like, oh yes, I'm the Queen of Hearts. Oh wait, no, that doesn't sound right. But I really like that investigative part of that world. That was really fun. That's a big one that's coming to mind right now. I think I like puzzles and stuff like that and figuring stuff out. So that was really fun to like go around, get the right pieces, and when you know what you're looking for, you just have to find the right thing to fit her memory slot. That was pretty good, and it just kind of fits the whole data thing of the game with them trying to unscramble the code of the journal. So they're trying to unscramble Alice's memories.
I think my favorite world in ReCoded is Hollow Bastion, because it's just really fun to revisit my favorite world from KH1 in a different way. At the same time, I don't know if I'm the biggest fan of not having a Keyblade and making Donald and Goofy do everything, but once you get to the actual like combat stuff, like against the boss fights, it's really, really fun. Yeah, I just like exploring Hollow Bastion and listening to the music and fighting the bosses, obviously.
Overall, I would say I actually enjoy Olympus Coliseum the most, because while it's a very, I guess, monotonous world, quote unquote, with its 30 layers of turn-based combat, just moving around within that world and trying to combine the various commands into some new attack, like you could combine fire and a physical hit to explosion or something like that. It made it really interesting, and just trying to advance further and further to then beat the Behemoth, Ice Titan, and Rock Titan. Yeah, that's what made it the most interesting world to me.
My favorite world would have to be Agrabah. I just really love the section where you're in the Cave of Wonders, and it just felt so much more expanded than the original Kingdom Hearts 1's Cave of Wonders, because there was this room where you're following a really long line of boulders being kind of shoved through the entire room, and I just kept dying there constantly, but it felt like an actual good challenge to go through compared to Kingdom Hearts 1, where it's just get to the end of the room and you didn't really have to do anything past that.
Now, before we talk gameplay, we should acknowledge that this actually is a remake of a game that was originally exclusive to a specific Japanese mobile phone service and played more like a regular Kingdom Hearts game than the remake in most ways. In the original game, it actually doesn't even use the command deck at all. Another big difference is the debug sequences are night and day between the original and the remake. The debug sequences in the original are more like puzzles rather than rooms we fight through in the remake, but enough about the original. When looking at it from a glance, it looks like it's just going over Kingdom Hearts 1 again. And it is, but it's different this time, I swear. While we do go across the same Disney worlds from the first game, much like what Square tries to do with Kingdom Hearts 3, each world has its own gimmick. For example, Wonderland has you go through mazes. Olympus is actually pretty unique though, in that the gameplay here is entirely turn-based and you actually have party members here. Which I won't get into why that is because spoilers. And the abilities you can use in battle actually depend on what set of 3 commands you can string together in a combo, which actually is really cool for a one-off thing to include in a DS game. In my opinion, this game makes the best use of the command deck style of a Kingdom Hearts game, and for a DS game, the combat is actually really fluent and is the best DS game I've ever played, funnily enough. The game also has some crazy good boss design, and a lot of the fights are really well balanced to where it is a proper challenge and doesn't feel hard for the sake of just being hard. It even has a cool mechanic which allows you to collect various computer chips to put into Data Sora to power him up and give him brand new abilities. However, in this same grid there are various cheats to unlock, such as changing the difficulty and having enemies have different drops depending on the difficulty, adjusting how easily rare items drop, or even making your commands level faster at the cost of leveling up Sora himself slower. Now, the Keyblades themselves actually are upgradable in this game and unlock more abilities and make the Keyblades stronger. Now, a common misconception is that Kingdom Hearts Key was the first game to ever have upgradable Keyblades, but Key came out 3 years after ReCoded. This is partially because a lot of people skip over this title because the story is kind of a huge nothing burger, but towards the end it actually introduces some major plot points as well as setting up the next title that would eventually become Kingdom Hearts Dream Drop Distance. The game, surprisingly enough though, has a sorta kinda new game plus in being able to go back to the worlds you completed to do quests and collect all the hidden prizes there. There is even a score attack mode and the option to replay the story of that world. The game also encourages replaying the worlds on other difficulties because world completion bonuses and enemies give different rewards depending on the difficulty you're playing on. Pretty neat if I do say so myself. All in all, surprisingly the gameplay is really in-depth for a DS game in the early 2010s.
I do think ReCoded has the best command deck system, and in terms of the base combat, I do think it comes really close, if not being par with the mainline Kingdom Hearts combat as well. And that's probably a really hot take, but like people love KH2 for how well the combos flow and whatnot, and I think ReCoded's combat flows in the same fashion. And I think ReCoded actually has like the most creativity with combos since there's so many options to choose from, while in other Kingdom Hearts games you're more limited, and in the other command deck games, like I said, the commands kind of take you out of your base combat, kind of messes up with the flow of the combat. I do think more people should try ReCoded just to see how good the combat is. During the gimmicks though, I think that's where ReCoded kind of falters for me with the combat, because it just lacks that depth that I'm looking for, especially something like Olympus Coliseum, where all you're really doing is pressing A at the right time, and then what is it, B to block or something? It's just a timing test, and there's not really much else to it.
Overall, the combat in ReCoded is pretty fun. I think it's an interesting mixture of the limitations that the Nintendo DS poses, the command deck of BBS, and a little bit of the agility that Sora has between like KH2 and 3. And I feel like a lot of the bosses, like let's say Roxas for example, they feel a little bit like KH3 bosses, like a mixture between KH3 and KH BBS bosses, where they would flinch from attacks and you could keep them stunned for a little while, but sometimes they would then dodge out of your attacks, sometimes they would retaliate. There are also enemies that just do not really care what you do, like for example the Genie Jafar fight in Agrabah. It's definitely a very polarizing combat system because it's again very well implemented, it's very well structured, but the enemies that you're fighting a lot of times don't really react to it in a very satisfying way, while others do. It's a very hit or miss system.
I think ReCoded is probably the closest we'll get to a handheld version feeling like the numbered titles that we'll get. I feel like they really nailed how combat feels in a handheld version, and also like put their own kind of twist on it to make it fun and engaging. I always see people like talk about ReCoded and how good it feels, and the way that they synergize that with the command deck is top notch. Big fan.
I think that the combat is definitely the highlight of the game. I feel as though it flows together surprisingly well especially in comparison to Days, which is by the same developers. I feel like they kind of came around and really cooked on ReCoded, because I feel like Days was kind of rough, and then they really turned it around. But I really love how fluid it feels. It feels very kinetic. It's like most of your moves, I feel, are actually viable. Like, I feel like you have more options. And I guess another kind of hot take is that I feel as though it's probably to me, it's the best of the Command deck games, purely on like a base combat feel. Like, it feels very satisfying. It feels like a lot of your moves will actually connect. It feels like you're actually able to experiment with your commands, with how the command melding in the game is kind of set up. It actually allows you to really experiment with like different combinations, and there's just like so many different ways that you can like try and approach the game with like the cheats and prize cheats, and like turning up the HP or turning down the HP, or adjusting the difficulty. It just feels a lot more satisfying to play, to me personally. More satisfying than Birth by Sleep, and more satisfying than 3D. I would still say it's probably, to me, the best of the Command deck games to play.
The story of the game it's bad. I'll just go ahead and say it. It's not very good. You can even really skip it. It's important to know, so you should definitely watch the movie and everything like that, but like, it's not like the most important story of the game, but the gameplay is where it makes up for that in dividends. It's the exact opposite of Days, where Days has an amazing story, arguably one of the best stories in the entire series, but the gameplay of that game is kind of meh. There's some defenders of that too. I think it's fun in its own right if you really know how to use it, but you have to really know how to use it in that case. And the panel system is very complex. It's not something that a casual person will be able to understand and get, but I think that's where ReCoded makes up for, is that I think anybody can jump into ReCoded and be able to understand, like, oh, I can only use a certain amount of commands before my thing's maxed out. Maybe I should balance that out. Oh, I can level my keyblades. This is really cool. Oh, I place items in my grid to level up and everything. I think it's a lot more casual friendly as opposed to like Days, for instance.
Okay, I'll admit it. The story for the most part is just a copy-paste of KH1. But the game opens with Donald, Goofy, Jiminy Cricket, and King Mickey in Disney Castle after the events of Kingdom Hearts 2. Jiminy was trying to organize his journals from the first two games and noticing a line that reads, "Thank Nominate." After looking a bit further, he finds another line that says their hurting will be mended when you return to end it. Bars. Mickey's amazing idea short after is to digitize the journal and hop inside to find out more. We're then introduced to Data Sora, awakened by Mickey on a digital version of Destiny Islands, and asked him to go through the events of the first game again to try and figure out who is hurting. We're then shortly introduced to the bugs that are wreaking havoc in the journal. Eventually, Pete and Maleficent get word of this, and they jump into the journal as well to try and stop Data Sora from fixing the journal. Oh, and the journal's Riku, by the way. Without getting too into the plot, it also introduces a couple of very important plot points that are still ongoing in the series. Despite this though, the game doesn't really add much to the overall story of the series. I will also say this game has some of the best voice direction in comparison to some of the other titles in the game.
One thing that helps a lot when you're playing the game is just exploration. This is one thing that the game does really well. If you explore all kinds of areas, especially if you like come back to them later on, you can find new dungeons or maybe even stat matrix chips that you didn't find along the way before. Maybe some that you couldn't even grab with really high stats, like a strength +3 or an HP +8. And those things can go a long way in making the game a lot easier. Like if I take the speedrun, for example, the speedrun tries to go with minimal stats, of course, because it's only like, it tries to go for whatever we can find along the way. But there's so much more that you can find out of your way if you do well in system sectors. and just take those extra few minutes to look around the world a little bit, those stat chips go a really long way. And if you then maybe get lucky with a few commands combinations, you can get really strong commands like Judgment Triad. One thing you should be doing is rack up some money and try combining Muscle Strike from the Moogle shop with other commands, because Muscle Strike serves as a really good basis to develop into bigger commands like Muscle Strike and Wind Tracer. They turn into Judgment Triad or other good commands. Yeah, so I stream on Twitch. I sometimes end up streaming routing progress on all kinds of completionist categories, but I also run them, of course, at twitch.tv/Dessa35. Mostly Final Fantasy games, so Kingdom Hearts games like Platinum Trophy categories, or maybe 100% of those exist or defined in any way.
So one trick that I learned from my recent playthrough is, in terms of the platforming, you should enable auto jumping, because you're going to be playing the game with a D-pad. The auto jump really helps. Basically, it makes Sora jump across automatically to the next platform, similar to like Ocarina of Time. And that makes platforming a lot easier, because otherwise it is really, really challenging with the controls that you have to deal with. And then with the combat, just don't be afraid of trying new things. Like, every Keyblade has its own unique property and way of attacking. And I think that's really cool. In terms of commands, if you need a really good command, Judgment Triad is like the best command in the entire game. It does a ridiculous amount of damage. It does use up more slots than other commands, but it's definitely worth it. Yeah, just mess around with like all of the tools given to you and see what you like. There's a lot of room for creativity and lots of variety. And I guess one other thing is the leveling up system. Make sure you're equipping your command chips whenever you possibly can, because a lot of people forget about that, because they really do stack up over time. Yeah, last but not least, shout outs to Dustin. He's been doing a great job. Please like and subscribe. He's going to be releasing a lot of awesome content like this.
I'd say don't worry about bumping up the difficulty a bit in the, I want to say the chipboard, but don't feel bad about swapping it to a higher difficulty or lowering the difficulty, because the rewards that you get from it will definitely feel a lot better to get past that, especially if you've gone through previous Kingdom Hearts game before. I am actually working on a video that's going to compare the Like a Dragon or Yakuza series with Kingdom Hearts, because I've noticed that there's a lot of similarities in their stories. And I want to see how many similarities there are and what I think that could mean for the Kingdom Hearts 4 story.
I will say one tip that I definitely have for anybody playing the game for the first time: whenever you get to one of those debug rooms where you have the multiple floors with the challenge and stuff like that, take advantage of every condition that it gives you. It'll say something like, no jumping in this area, don't use healing commands, or maybe just something as simple as like, don't attack but a certain amount of times. It'll give you challenges that give you multipliers to the points that you give into the rooms. But there's so many good stuff at the end of the room that you can get when you don't, with the points that you get with that. So if you have to like take your time and maybe redo some rooms or stuff like that so that you can make sure you have the right amount of points, absolutely do it, because you're going to be set up in the long run with the stuff that you can buy at the end, as well as you're getting more used to the combat as you go. So it's really only helping you. Over on YouTube, OG_Scrax, I do a lot of the timeline videos for a lot of the characters. So far, I've done Riku, Roxas, and Aqua. And they're some of my favorite videos to make, to the point where I delve into the entire lore of the character, get entire like backstory of them, really understand like the writing for that character and what they were trying to tell with that. And I tried to implement that in a video format to explain to people to view it. I think it's some of the best work I've ever done as far as scripting and everything in video wise. But if you guys are ever wanting to check that stuff out, like to really learn more in depth about like why certain characters are the way they are, or like the story that is trying to be told with them, I definitely tried to dive into a lot of it with that.
The biggest tip, or like something I knew when I was playing, is play around with your command deck as much as you can. Try to fit that into your combos. Like, don't just rely on your Keyblade and Keyblade abilities. I think that really fully utilizing the command deck and melding commands, making new ones, and figuring out how that all works with the certain keyblade that you have is essential. There's also another tip that I always try to do of if you're worried about your clock gauge like falling down and you're like trying to like get to the next area or there's no enemies around, you can always like hit bug blocks around you to keep your clock gauge from kind of going down. So as you see it trickle down, you can hit a block and it will stop your clock gauge for a second, and then you can move forward. I am working on the psychology of Nominee, so that will be coming out soon, so look forward to that.
I would say putting your level up chips in between the CPUs. Always. Don't ever put them somewhere else, because if you ever have to like rearrange them, it's like a big pain in the butt to like get new chips, then like switch them out and like rearrange things. Just like always try to prioritize putting your level up chips in between CPUs. I mean, if you want to come to my channel to watch my videos whenever I make them on occasion, that'd be great. I love getting comments. I love talking to people in the comments. I love hearing people's opinions on video games and kind of their experiences. And even people who don't or are not doing like challenge runs or anything like big like that, I do sometimes feel as though it's sort of like the average everyday person's opinion. Some people don't feel like it's valued. I want to like promote people to be able to share their opinions on games that they like, even if they're not playing them at the most extreme level, because I think that that's valuable. And I love to just hear people, share that. And so, you can come subscribe to my channel. I'd love to get to, 1,000 subscribers. And I just love to hear people chatting in the comments.
And with that, I'm done ranting about Kingdom Hearts. I know it sounds like I'm beating a dead horse, but this game is honestly worth checking out if you love action RPGs. Do not let the fact that it's on a DS fool you into not checking it out. But did it work? Do you want to see more Kingdom Hearts videos in the future? Let me know in the comments below if you ended up trying the game out, or just overall your thoughts of the game. Thanks for watching, and have a wonderful day.